Stumbled into a show. It's probably not the one he expected. But hey, stick around for a drunk in a crocodile hat. Stick around for mayhem at a drive-in movie theater. Stick around for them. Oh, what a ride on an airline. All right, let's talk about Frontier Airlines. I don't have to make a joke here. If you know Frontier Airlines, you already know. I could end this cold open right here, and you would get it. A drunk in a Crocodile Dundee hat gets sat next to you. He keeps ordering drinks and spilling them on you. First it's water, then beer, then you order soup. Who orders soup on an airline? What kind of airline serves soup in the middle of the air during turbulence? I mean, it's starting to feel like a sitcom. While you're distracted, prepared to save your crotch from the soup, the lady behind you has phone sex so hard she knocks your own phone out of its charging cradle and it breaks. What a ride. By the way, something breaks on the airplane itself, and it takes 2 hours later to get going. Just enough time for you to miss your connecting flight to your destination. Alright, let's start the show.
Crack open a cold box of wine or pour something cold on ice because it's the Binge-Watchers podcast.
Home video headlines. What's new in the greater world of streaming, movies, television, and everything else in between? Nicolas Cage, he's in talks to star in HBO's True Detective Season 5, supposedly set in New York. Cool. A True Detective story in the Big Apple sounds great. However, I wonder if Nick Cage is cast in this because he recently played a serial killer in that movie Longlegs, right? It'd be interesting to see if they did a True Detective from the perspective of the killer. They haven't done that yet. Let's try that one out for size. Alright, Deadline reports that horror legends Kane, Hodder, Bill Moseley, and Michael Berryman will star in Spawn of the Living Dead, alongside Casper Van Dien and Trina Parks. John Russo is involved, which is a good sign because he co-wrote Night of the Living Dead, and of course he wrote Return of the Living Dead, and the Night of the Living Dead remake. And now here's where we have arrived as a movie-going public. Bone Lake has a 95% Rotten Tomato score. Congrats. I hope we get to see Bone Lake 2, 3, and of course, Return to Bone Lake. And in 25 years from now, we're going to get that Bone Lake remake. Because the first one's so good, they just got to keep remaking them. Movie of the week. 2 police detectives try to catch a serial killer who was stalking a rural California drive-in theater, randomly killing people with a sword. It's Drive-In Massacre. And the majority of the cast used pseudonyms because this movie was made non-union, and they wanted to avoid being fined by the Screen Actors Guild. The script was written in a single week, shot in 4 days. Sounds like a Sci-Fi Channel original. Like a Sharknado or a Hedgehog Hurricane, Time Travel Duck Typhoon. One of them movies that they shoot for like $100,000 in 14 days with, I don't know, Lindsay Lohan or Ian Ziering or whatever, Where am I at? Now I'm thinking about Sharknado movies. The sequences with Germy at the carnival were filmed without a permit, naturally. The nighttime scenes at the drive-in theater were shot in a single evening and also without a permit. The car interior scenes were shot in a studio in Hollywood. That's professional, I guess. The sequence in the warehouse with Buck Flower was added at the last minute in order to pad out the running time to have a reasonable feature length, and filmed without permits as well. Alright, now Buck Flower, I gotta mention this. There's like 2 actors in the 70s, 80s, 90s that portrayed like, they portrayed hobos, but they did it so well that they're like scene stealers, right? For playing either emotional or psychotic or funny hobos, like train runaways, and they would do things like one of them gets killed in Cycle of the Werewolf, aka Silver Bullet. I don't know if you've seen that movie. But there's two of them, and I always get them mixed up. But anyway, Buck Flowers in this movie, and he's one of the famous ones that shows up as a lovable hobo scene stealer. All right. Um, Again, it's like what do they call it? A red herring or something like that. He's like a suspect, right? But he's got his own thing going on. Like, anyway, yeah, because the cops in this movie are responding to every call about anybody wielding a knife or a machete or just running around causing mayhem because they're trying to track down who's the guy going back to the drive-in and slashing everybody up. All right, anyway. The drive-in utilized was one in Simi Valley. It's called the Simi Drive-In. It used to be on Terra Rajada Road. Is that right? In Simi Valley, California. It was a 500-car venue operated as a theater from 1963 until the early 1990s, and they tore it down to build a housing development. That's unfortunate. I don't know how many drive-in movie theaters are left. I'm not sure. There's one in like Morin, Pennsylvania, I think. I know recently. I think they had the Evil Dead movies touring at drive-ins a couple summers ago. I mean, they did. I mean, during the lockdown, I think they were doing like stand-up comedy shows at drive-ins, and they definitely were pumping movies back into drive-ins during the lockdown a few years ago during that COVID nonsense that we went through. But other than that, I don't know. There's not like a resurgence for it. It's more like a nostalgia thing. It's like even going to the movies, people are like, "Oh, let's hit that drive-in." They used to, blast the audio from the movies through like a radio station assigned to the movie theater, at the drive-in, or they had speaker boxes that you would just pull the wires into your car or something like that. Although I thought you could do it today, you could set up like an internet radio station that would pump the audio for all the movies. That'd be something. I would suspect. Anyway, all right. All right, we'll be right back with our favorite bits from this movie called Drive-In Massacre. Tonight's messages, what's going on? I think I had mentioned the other week that you should be on this new Star Trek show on Paramount Plus, but they got a new Dexter show out as well. It's the only way to watch South Park right now because they cut some kind of deal where all the new South Parks are going to Paramount Plus. Did I binge the new season? Yeah, I caught up to it. I've watched a couple of South Parks. Yeah, they knocked the president around in a few episodes, but one of the funniest things was when what's Stan Marsh? What's the main the main kid's dad? Marsh. I forget I don't know why I can't think of his first name, but I know the last name is Marsh. But he's got that integrity. He's got that marijuana farm. The episode where he's shutting it down and he's willing to sell off its assets, including the talking towel. That was a funny one. So anyway, if you're interested in the new South Parks, I mean, are they that great? Are they like classic South Parks? I can't speak to that. Why don't you make your own decision? You can watch it for 7 days for free. That would give you enough time to watch, I think, all the episodes that have come out so far. We got an affiliate link for Paramount Plus. Grab it, sign up, try it out, free for 7 days. Maybe get on the new Dexter. I don't know. You're like, I thought Dexter Morgan was dead. Everybody thinks that until they have to make a new show and make money on Paramount Plus. Anyway. All right. That's it for tonight's messages. Moving on. Back to the show already in progress with our favorite bits from Drive-In Massacre. The drive-in manager is one of those dudes. He lost his time in labor hours and he just takes it out on everyone in the movie or everyone on the staff. Then he's got a lot attendant named Germy, who's a former circus geek, right? He sweeps up the drive-in. He says he protects the drive-in, but I don't know how well he could be protecting the drive-in when all the patrons are getting murdered. Then you got a pervert trucker. I mean, he's clearly the wrong suspect, but again, they're trying to lure the audience away with like who the dude is, and it's not really any of these suspects, right? But he lets himself get interrogated by the police, and he lets them search his house. Dude, no. He should know better. You never been interviewed by detectives, and you never let them search your house freely. I do like the intimate close-up scenes of different couples at the drive-in who have their own stories going on before they lose their heads. The detectives at one point do like a drag sting operation to try to blend in, which I think is funny. It's really silly. It's cut to the detective's car. One of the detectives is dressed up like the wife in like a dress, makeup, all that stuff, and then is making innuendo jokes with the other detective, and that's a funny bit. Hey, a couple of minutes in this movie that's otherwise pretty dry and timid until there's a sword slashing somebody's head off. I mean, not much is going on in the movie, so to keep the pacing, it's the funniest thing the detectives do because yeah, the detectives are, I guess, in theory, there's no strong main character lead in this movie, all right? You got the detectives, you're following them around. They don't have much personality. So, I mean, I don't know, what are you going to do? So, they got this one bit, like I said, it's a drag bit. That's one of the only amusing things in the movie. Anyway. Oh, and the movie ends with a warning for moviegoers. That's not much of a spoiler alert. I know I'm supposed to spoil things, but I tend to say I only spoil the movies that I love, so if I, you know, you're not going to hear a major spoiler because how entertaining is the movie, we'll find out. I'm about to rate this bitch. Alright. Rate. R-A-T-E. Alright. We got a special patented magical movie rating system on this show. Here's how we break it down. Binge now, binge later, binge never. How does that work? It works like this. You may have heard it before. Maybe you haven't. Let's educate you. Binge now is watch it now. Binge later is get around to it. Add it to the list, but you don't have to watch it immediately. Binge never is exactly what it sounds. Don't waste your time. You can't get the 90 minutes of your life back. You're going to be thinking about licking the paint off the walls if you watch this movie. That's how binge never works. All right, where does this movie land? Drive-In Massacre. You know, it's better than this hospital massacre movie that we watched the other week. So I'd say binge later. I mean, the ending is disappointing. They don't reveal the slasher. They warn theater goers to look out for him, her, or them in their own movie theater going experience as the movie plays. At the end of the movie, it's like, hey, watch out! The guy's still on the loose. We gotta do something about it. You know, but he could be in the movie theater with you right now as you're watching this. Alright. Fan service. If the fans are chiming in, what are they squawking about? Gus5555. I feel like we met this 55555 guy before, but you know, let's look at his comment or question. He's asking me, am I excited to see the Punisher and the new Spider-Man? Yeah, but I'm tired of all the misinformation or like all the Instagram dumps about the new Spider-Man movie. Like at this point, every Marvel villain is the villain in the new Spider-Man movie, and every hero is making a cameo. I mean, give me a break. By the way, here's my Marvel hero lineup: Spider-Man, Darkhawk, the Punisher, Blade, Ghost Rider, and the Hulk. But mostly, you know, as a kid, I read Spider-Man, Darkhawk, and Punisher comics. My favorite Punisher actors: Dolph Lundgren and Ray Stevenson. I will say, though, there was this classic Spider-Man and Blade team-up against Morbius, the living vampire. That was great. It was like 70s, 80s, so it might have been Ray Romita Spider-Man or Ray Romita Jr. Spider-Man. But anyway, if you go back and look at Peter Parker when they were drawing him in the 70s and 80s or whatever, he had like this wavy hair and there was like a lot of afros. So I remember that was the style of the comic. So it had to have been a run. I saw it in like an annual, which means they take like a volume of Spider-Man books and smash them together in one giant like Anubis. So in the middle of that book, like there's like one where in that book it was like Spider-Man was getting married, Spider-Man's first encounter with the Juggernaut, and then and the middle story was him and Blade, like Morbius is causing trouble on the college campus or whatever, where Peter Parker's going to school, and then you know Blade's the vampire expert, so he shows up. He's helping Spider-Man, and then we learn like how Morbius is obsessed with like a human girlfriend. I thought the story was compelling. I was reading online, researching for this show to try to remember if I could find down the comic book number, but I didn't find that. But I also found out that, you know, Spider-Man and Blade and Morbius have somehow teamed up before. I haven't read that story, but that sounds interesting. And then also, I guess there's a more modern team up with Spider-Man and Blade where they're going against Dracula. I'd read that. I haven't read that book either, but I know at one point like they had Dracula become like an uber villain in like the early 2000s in Marvel, and he was like fighting all of the superheroes, and I think he even vampirized some of the Marvel heroes. And again, if we're talking about like wild fan stories that would make great movies in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, one of those adaptations would work. Also, there's only one Blade, ever only going to be one Blade. Wesley Snipes said it. Anyway, all right. Moving on. Staff picks. Okay, so sometimes we talk about like if you're not going to watch the movie of the week, what else can you watch? However, this is the 7th year that we've done Summer Slash, which is like a series of horror movie reviews in the summertime, and we thought, wouldn't it be funny if we talked about the 7th sequel from some of these horror franchises? So this week we had to cover this movie called Amityville Dollhouse because it's the 7th entry in the Amityville horror film series. I don't know, started in the late 80s, mostly in the 90s, and I don't know how many there are. There might be like 13 of these movies, actually. Like, they just keep going. And then there's a couple remakes and documentaries and whatever else. It's a whole thing. You can look it up. Anyway, Amityville Dollhouse. A children's dollhouse, which is a miniature of the infamous haunted Long Island house, is given to a young girl where the demonic evil comes out to cause major terror. All right. Contrary to some plot summaries, the director-producer Steve White says the movie is not meant to take place on the grounds of the original house in Amityville. The only connection is the dollhouse replica of the house. Presumably, the dollhouse had been in the home in Amityville at some point and was infested with its evil, though he admits he did not explain it in the movie itself. I thought he kind of did, because he had a news clipping of the house being burned down. One could assume that it came from the house. And plus, like, one of the main characters talks about his house burning down. So you're equating in your mind that he was the child in the other movie. But look, I'm getting ahead of myself because I'm going to bring that up later. All right. The trio of demons in the climax were made by mixing and matching various pieces of props, costumes, and makeup that Soda FX had already created for earlier products and still had lying around. So due to budgetary constraints, the original plan had been to simply use cardboard cutouts and show them in silhouette shadows, but then instead they just slapped together monsters from other movies. Clayton Murray remained in character as the undead specter of Jimmy's father whenever he had the makeup on. Even when the cameras were not rolling, he would crack up various dark jokes around the set, and the director had compared him to an early version of Deadpool. Steve White is a horrible director, but he has produced The Devil's Advocate and Cabin Boy. So as a producer, he's doing good, but as a director, he's pretty damn terrible, and this one movie is a perfect example of that. It's literally his only directing credit as far as I know. And then Clayton Murray, he's known for this movie and like one episode of Star Trek Voyager. Poor bastard. However, his zombie makeup in this, or his ghoul makeup, is pretty incredible, and it has various stages of decay, like 3 or 4 stages. So in that way, they did pretty good effects wise, on the ghoul. And I think they had time to do that because there aren't a lot of monstrous demonic things in here that you see. It's also mostly suggested, so the fact that they knocked out his makeup really well is commendable. So this movie's about a step family. Like, the dad, has brought in his teenage son and his preteen daughter. She's the one who gets the dollhouse. They're from another marriage, and then the stepmother has a small son as well. So it's like they're merging these two families together. And then the dead dad comes back for the younger boy, and he's a great ghoul, like I said. Now, the cheapskate stepdad takes the dollhouse out of a shed, and of course it's haunted, and that's what sets off the story. So him being a cheapskate, not going out and buying his stepdaughter, that's his real daughter. Anyway, not going out to like Toys R Us and buying the kid a legitimate present is like what sets off this whole story in the first place. The stepmom dreams of banging the teenage son, naturally. Of course that happens in this movie. There's also this moment when the stepdad seems to be connected to the original Amityville house burning down in the other sequel, but the continuity timing seems off because with that house burning down, and in that sequel, I remember watching this. Yeah, they burned it down at one point, but the kids were teenagers themselves or little kids, and there's not enough time to have passed. Like, this movie is set maybe a year or two later after the house burning down, so this guy couldn't be grown up and have his own family. He would still be a kid. So that is where it falls apart. But also he has psychic powers. I don't know. He's basically explaining that he has The Shining, like in Stephen King's The Shining, to other characters in this movie, and that's why he knows the dollhouse is haunted. And then, bring up another point, they have a couple come over who's like, this is like their chips and salsa couple, the neighbors, they come over and do the house parties, but the neighbor's like a shaman. Like, this guy knows about demons, he knows about haunted things, and he fights them with black magic. I don't know. It's a little suspect. All right. Both movies that I covered today are on Tubi, by the way. I mean, wild. I was considering dropping Tubi links in the show notes just so Tubi can see that I'm like, hey, I'm watching your movies, Tubi, what's up? All right. You know what? You don't have to go home, but like the song says, it's closing time. Go get a burrito. We got we got Scream 3 to watch again, and we're doing that because Scream 3 supposedly has a connection to the new Scream that's going to come out. So we're like, you know what? Even though we did a ranking of all of our Scream movies that we like, let's go back. Let's watch Scream 3, and it's the most Hollywood of them all with all the references. Let's throw that into the mix this year for Summer/7. So next week, Scream 3, and then we've almost run out of 7 sequels actually that are worth talking about, but we got to keep going anyway. We have Tremor Shrieker Island on the horizon, and then we eventually do have to get around to Hellraiser Deader, even though we've been putting it off this whole marathon. We've been sticking it to the very end of the list because we just are grinding our teeth on that one. All right. So we have some headaches on the horizon, but we're gonna do it. We got 3 movies left for Summer/7, so, and then it's donezo.